working group on virtual goods and services for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Valentin from Oceangy Europe, and for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to take you to an Oceangy journey. Next slide, please. Next slide again. First, for those who don't know us, we are Oceangy Europe, the largest network of Oceangy professionals in the world. We work with all the Oceangy value chain, with governments and international organizations to bring Oceangy to market. Next slide, please. So why Oceangy matters? Well, living in a net zero emission world tomorrow means massive electrification of all uses. That means that we will need as much renewable power as possible. And that's where Oceangy comes in. Next slide, please. We estimate that the global potential of wave and tidal is 337 gigawatts. That's massive. To give you an order of magnitude, that's more than the total installed wind capacity in Europe at the moment. Secondly, because it is essential to complement other variables that will make most of tomorrow's grid, like wind and solar. Tidal, which is produced by the gravitational pull of the moon, is 100% predictable years in advance. I can tell you in 10 years at 10:30 in the morning how much energy this device will produce. Wave that is produced thanks to the motion of the wind on the ocean is produced long after the wind stops. So both technologies keep producing energy, if you like, after wind and solar. So that reduces your need for storage, and that provides a better balancing for your grid. And lastly, Oceangy is an indigenous energy sources, so it's produced and manufactured locally, and it does not require any fuel import to produce power. That means that it is the ultimate combination in terms of security of supply and stability of prices. Next slide, please. Now, we represent 5 technologies: tidal, wave, ocean thermal conversion, seawater conditioning, and salinity gradient. But for the sake of time tomorrow, I'll focus on the 2 most major, which are tidal and wave. Next slide, please. So what's happening in the tidal and wave space today? Next slide, please. Well, it's been quite an exciting year last year, so I'm happy to share some positive news with you today. Around 200 million of funding has been allocated for the demonstration of wave and tidal technologies in Europe only. Tidal is moving towards a pre-commercial project with more than 110 megawatts of pre-commercial farms in the pipeline thanks to revenue support systems. And we're starting to develop the first pre-commercial farms for wave. That public support, along with technological progress, has sparked the interest of several energy majors last year. ESB, Total, Equinor, and Shell have all invested in Oceangy technology last year. Now let's take a closer look at project. Next slide, please. So what you see here is a UK technology that has 15 megawatt pre-commercial tidal farms under development in Scotland, thanks to revenue support system from the UK government. The CFD contract allocated support last year to around 11 pre-commercial farm projects that are meant to be deployed in the next 4 or 5 years. Next slide, please. What you see here on the picture is a French technology that received a financial package from the French government, combining grants and feed-in tariff, essentially subsidies plus kilowatt support, to build the largest pre-commercial tidal farm in the world, meant to be deployed in the north of France in the English Channel. Next slide, please. Here is a US technology with projects in Canada, Ireland, and US, and they are technology specifically designed for island and remote communities in developing regions, where heavy lifting equipment and large marine vessels are not always available. So this technology can plug directly into off-grid system and harness local renewable power, enabling these economies to get rid of expensive diesel fuel generation, if you like. Next slide, please. Moving on to wave energy now. We've put wave energy prototype in the water for years, and we are moving from prototype to pre-commercial farm. What you see on this photo is a Swedish company called Car Power that has 2 pre-commercial farm projects, one in Portugal and one in Ireland, among which in Ireland, the ESB, the state Irish utility, is involved in to bring a 5 megawatt pilot farm in the water over the next year. So they plan to deploy 17 of these devices by 2030. Next slide, please. Here, a Danish company that is developing a hybrid platform combining wave energy and floating wind along with a hydrogen station. They plan to deploy in the Canary in Spain over the next years. So the wave energy flap that is located at the bottom provides two main benefits. So it increases power extraction first, and also it provides power to the platform when there is no wind, since wave provide power long after the wind stops. Next slide, please. Lastly, we have other alternative markets that are developing at good pace in wave. What you see on the picture is a wave energy convector that has been developed by Eni, the energy Italian giant, to decarbonize their offshore operation. They plan to use wave energy to meet the goals of their decarbonization plan. Moving on to the next slide, please. Yeah. Now, in terms of goods and services, it's important to have in mind when thinking of ocean energy that ocean energy devices, like other renewable projects, actually are infrastructure projects. So they are built mainly and manufactured locally. So we have more a local approach to goods and services. Next slide, please. That being said, ocean energy is a global market. As you can see here, there are wave and tidal projects spanning over 4 continents. So there are certain type of goods and services that are traded when making ocean energy devices. Next slide, please. So the ocean energy supply chain is a mix of bespoke components produced by SMEs or large industrials and off-the-shelf components that are made available by other sectors. The largest part of ocean energy devices, which are hulls for wave energy, blades for tidal, or nacelles for tidal, are mainly made of steel and composite material. We use also cement to build the foundation to which the devices are tethered to, and devices are coated in resin epoxy because it's highly resistant to corrosion. Now, ocean energy devices are also highly complex pieces of engineering. So we use a lot of electronic components to build ocean devices, like pitching systems, sensors, power, takeoff, drivetrain, gearboxes, generators, to actually convert this kinetic energy into electricity. Generators, to give you an order of magnitude, is roughly the size of a meeting room, so it's pretty big. In terms of services, what we're using basically the same services than the offshore wind sector. So it includes, as you can see on these pictures, large vessels for commissioning of devices, port infrastructure, slipways, and skilled workforce. Now, as I said in the beginning, with more local approach to this good and services, what we see is that when there is a good market visibility, when there is a policy support, and when there is an ocean energy resource, developers tend to establish themselves directly into the country. So they worked with local suppliers to establish their supply chain and their manufacturing capacity on site. So the trade aspect is less relevant than the market visibility given the state of development of the sector. And we're still above market prices. So that's why we need public support to bridge the gap. Moving on to the next slide, please. Next slide. Now, ocean energy provide many socio-economic benefits. I've already started to touch upon it. It's a new industry at home, so it's manufactured at home. It's AV devices, so that provides us a lot of jobs for locally. It provides also opportunities for existing sector, existing supply chain, but also for supply chain in a loss of momentum, like shipbuilding companies, like oil and gas, like fisheries. And ocean energy projects are using at least minimum 70% of local content. So most of it is built locally. Now, when it comes to developing countries, ocean energy can provide off-grid power to remote communities and developing regions that are not well connected. Devices, they can plug directly into off-grid system, enabling to basically get rid of expensive diesel generation imports. And lastly, that there's an opportunity to attract and to draw foreign direct investment into countries with ocean energy resources. Moving on to the next slide, please. Now, in terms of challenges for tidal and wave, we've cracked the technology. The main challenges is the access to capital across the stage of development. So there are two main stages of development, prototype development and commercialization. Now, prototype development, they are not meant to generate electricity, but to collect learning, if you like. So they are not meant to generate revenues and to repay then investment. So that's why they need to be ground funded. Now, after, a prototype follows pilot farms and pre-commercial farms. So they can generate revenues, generate electricity and sell it, but they are first of the kind project of their nature. So they cannot attract private capital, private investment as much as commercial technology would do. So that's why they need a top up on the electricity prices to have a business case. Moving on to the next slide. Now, what governments can do actually to harness the power of ocean energy? Moving on to the next slide, please. There are three main drivers to boost ocean energy development and to attract investment. The first one is deployment target. Market visibility is key to attract investment. That there has to be a political signal, if you like, that the government support the technology in some way. Otherwise, investors won't step in. Technology support for demonstration via funding to support the cost of innovation and help future investment for pilot farm and for prototype. And lastly, revenue support to attract investors. As I was saying, revenue support is actually critical to provide investors with long-term certainty. So this will enable first a pre-commercial project to happen, to go down the cost reduction curve thanks to economy of scale, and then to become competitive and be able to develop without support. Now, these measures are measures that have brought wind and solar to market 10 years ago, so they are proven efficient, like you know, and they're already starting to take effect, like as I said at the beginning of the presentation, in Europe, in UK, and France. And we've synthesized them and detailed them in this report that we've co-produced with Arena called Scaling Up Investment. So please feel free to take a deep dive, pun intended, if you want more detail. I will stop here and thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take more question if there is. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Valentin.